Welcome to a chilling journey into one of America's most infamous prisons. In this video, we'll explore why Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania has haunted inmates, guards, and ghost hunters for nearly 2 centuries. From hooded men led into total silence to a mob boss screaming at a ghost only he could see, this crumbling castle-like fortress was built to save souls, and instead, it broke them. Was it a bold experiment in reform, or a machine built for suffering? Let's dive in.
In the late 1700s, Philadelphia's prisons were overcrowded, filthy, and violent. Men, women, and children were often locked up together with almost no separation. A group of reformers, many of them Quakers, believed there had to be a better way. Their idea was radical for its time. Instead of punishing criminals with violence, why not isolate them completely and let silence and reflection turn them into better people? In 1821, the Pennsylvania legislature approved funding for a new kind of prison, one built entirely around this idea. Construction began in 1822 under architect John Haviland, and when the doors finally opened in 1829, it was the most expensive public building in the United States. They called it Eastern State Penitentiary, and the word penitentiary itself was coined here from the idea of penitence. The first prisoner, a young farmer convicted of burglary, entered the prison in October of 1829. He was led inside wearing a black hood so he could never see another inmate's face, and he would spend the coming years almost entirely alone.
A machine built to break men. Eastern State's design was unlike anything the world had seen. Architect John Haviland built it like a wheel, with 7 long cell blocks radiating out from a central hub, so a single guard standing in the middle could see straight down every hallway just by turning around. Each prisoner lived in an individual cell, measuring roughly 7.5 feet wide, 12 feet long, and 16 feet high, with a private outdoor exercise yard attached to it. On paper, it sounded almost humane. Every cell had a skylight nicknamed the Eye of God, central heating, and even plumbing, luxuries that the White House itself didn't have at the time. But the cost of those comforts was total isolation. Prisoners ate alone, worked alone, and exercised alone behind their own private wall. Whenever they were moved anywhere inside the prison, guards placed a hood over their heads so they could never see or be seen by another human being. They were given a Bible, some simple labor like shoemaking or weaving, and nothing else. No visitors, no letters, no names, only a number. The reformers believed this silence would heal the mind. In practice, it did the opposite. Inmates reportedly began smearing the walls with their own waste. Others screamed for hours into the emptiness or fell into complete catatonic silence. When the celebrated author Charles Dickens visited Eastern State in 1842, he was horrified by what he saw. He called the system cruel and wrong, writing that its effects amounted to a slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain. That was worse, in his eyes, than physical torture. Whether the architects intended it or not, the building designed to save souls was, for many men inside it, quietly destroying their minds. 1900s. By the early 1900s, cracks were showing everywhere, literally and figuratively. Eastern State had been built to hold around 250 inmates. By the 1920s, the population had swelled past 1,700. There simply wasn't room to keep every prisoner isolated anymore. Men began sharing cells and dining halls, and in 1913, the prison officially abandoned the separate system altogether. The building that had been engineered around total silence was now as loud and crowded as any ordinary prison. That overcrowding and the desperation it created produced one of the most famous prison breaks in American history. In April of 1945, a group of 12 inmates, led by a bank robber named William Slick Willie Sutton, finished digging a tunnel that stretched almost 100 feet beneath the prison wall. It had taken them roughly a year of secret digging to complete. All 12 men escaped into the streets of Philadelphia.
and all 12 were recaptured within hours. Guards later discovered the prison was honeycombed with over 30 other incomplete escape tunnels dug by inmates over the decades, a quiet reminder of just how badly the men inside wanted out. The king of Cell Block 8. Of all the inmates who ever passed through Eastern State's gates, none is more infamous than Al Capone. In 1929, the Chicago mob boss known as Scarface was sentenced to 8 months at Eastern State on a weapons charge. But Capone's stay looked nothing like anyone else's. His cell was reportedly furnished with fine antique furniture, oil paintings, oriental rugs, and even a cabinet radio, a level of comfort almost unimaginable for a prison built on total deprivation. By every outward appearance, Capone was living like royalty behind bars. But according to long-standing prison legend, something inside that cell terrified even America's most feared gangster. Other inmates claimed that at night, Capone could be heard screaming into the darkness, begging someone named Jimmy to leave him alone. Many believe he was haunted by the ghost of James Clark, one of the men gunned down in Capone's own St. Valentine's Day massacre earlier that same year. Desperate for peace, Capone reportedly even brought in a psychic to try to drive the spirit away. It didn't work. Whether Capone was tormented by a real ghost or simply by his own guilt, the story of his sleepless nights in Eastern State has followed the prison ever since. The walls fall silent. By the 1960s, Eastern State was outdated, overcrowded, and falling apart. In 1961, the largest riot in the prison's history broke out, and state officials began seriously discussing whether the aging fortress should close for good. In 1971, after 142 years and roughly 75,000 inmates passing through its gates, Eastern State Penitentiary shut its doors for the final time. What happened next was almost as strange as anything that came before. The building was simply abandoned. For the next 2 decades, nature quietly reclaimed it. Trees grew up through crumbling cell blocks, vines swallowed the guard towers, roofs collapsed, and entire wings were left exactly as they were the day the last inmate walked out. Developers floated plans to turn the ruin into a shopping mall or a luxury condo complex, but none of them ever went through. In 1994, after 23 years of silence, the doors reopened. Not as a prison, but as a museum. A deliberately preserved ruin that visitors could walk through and feel exactly as time had left it. A house of ghosts. It wasn't until decades after it stopped operating as a prison that Eastern State earned its modern reputation as one of the most haunted places in America. Paranormal investigation teams have spent months here, and few claim to leave empty-handed. In Cell Block 12, visitors and staff report loud, unexplained laughter echoing off the stone walls with no source. In Cell Block 4, shadowy figures have reportedly been seen darting between doorways, only to vanish the moment anyone gets close. Guests standing near Capone's old cell describe a strange pressure in the air, as if someone unseen is standing directly behind them. And near what was once Death Row, a tall, silent, shadowy figure has been reported standing motionless at the end of the hallway, watching, before disappearing entirely. Some historians push back on treating any of this as literal proof of ghosts, pointing out that decaying buildings, sound-warping stone corridors, and near-total darkness naturally produce exactly the kind of unsettling effects visitors describe. But whether you believe in spirits or not, Eastern State remains one of the most heavily investigated locations in the country. And today, it even runs its own haunted house event inside the real cell blocks every fall, drawing thousands of thrill seekers into the same halls where real men once lost their minds. Genius or cruelty? For decades, historians have debated exactly how to remember Eastern State Penitentiary. To some, it represents a genuinely well-intentioned experiment, an attempt by reformers to build something more humane than the brutal jails that came before it. To others, it stands as a warning, proof that isolation, even when designed with good intentions, can quietly become its own form of torture. Both of these truths exist side by side, inside the same crumbling walls. Eastern State was never simply a torture chamber. and it was never simply a noble idea gone awry. It was, in its own way, one of America's first great experiments in trying to fix people by breaking their connection to everyone else and discovering, slowly and painfully, exactly what that costs. A ruin still standing. After everything you've just heard, would you spend the night alone in Al Capone's old cell? Today, Eastern State Penitentiary remains one of the most visited historic sites in Pennsylvania, drawing architecture lovers, history buffs, and ghost hunters from all over the world, all hoping to walk the same silent corridors, stand inside the same stone cells, and feel that same watchful presence that visitors have reported for decades. If you enjoyed this journey into one of America's darkest buildings, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling stories. Stay curious, and maybe be glad you're only visiting.